Welcome to DataForge Notebook. My name is Ashley Davis. I'm the developer of DataForge Notebook, author of the books Data Wrangling with JavaScript and Bootstrapping Microservices. This video is a getting started guide for DataForge Notebook. It's designed for beginners, so it's quite basic. We won't get into too many details. If possible, you should have DataForge Notebook open while you watch this video so that you can follow along. If you don't have DataForge Notebook yet, you can get your copy by visiting www.dataforgenotebook.com. Let's start from the top. What exactly is DataForge Notebook? DataForge Notebook is a desktop application that is available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Using DataForge Notebook, you can do coding in JavaScript and TypeScript with live visualizations while you are coding. It's like a REPL on steroids. The whole idea of DataForge Notebook is to make it simple and easy to do visual coding. You just download it, install it, and it comes with everything you need. You don't have to download anything else. You don't have to configure anything else. You can just start coding and be productive. Because DataForge Notebook is a desktop application, it runs on your own computer. This means that all your code and data are stored locally in complete privacy and you are in total control of it. Have you heard of Jupyter Notebook? Well, DataForge Notebook is just like Jupyter Notebook, but it's for JavaScript and TypeScript. I often use DataForge Notebook to do ad hoc exploratory coding, kickstart new projects, and do data analysis and visualization in JavaScript. You can evaluate any JavaScript or TypeScript code using DataForge Notebook. Anything that you can do under Node.js will also work in DataForge Notebook. When you have finished prototyping your code in DataForge Notebook, you can export it and use it in production. There's quite a few formats that you can export to, and I'll show you that soon. DataForge Notebook contains an embedded version of Node.js. That means you don't have to download and install Node.js separately. It's just automatically included. You can also use any NPM module with DataForge Notebook. That gives you a whole lot of power because there's a whole world of open source code modules ready and waiting for you to be used on npmjs.org. You can also load your own custom JavaScript code modules into DataForge Notebook, and that means you can share code between notebooks really easily. If you need any help installing DataForge Notebook, please follow the link on screen to set up and installation instructions that are available on the DataForge Notebook wiki. After you've installed DataForge Notebook, you'll see the welcome screen. There's lots of useful information here, so please make sure you have a good look at it to see what's available. There's also the help menu. There's loads of links here to resources online that can help you with DataForge Notebook, JavaScript, Node.js, Markdown, and a few other things. The first time you start DataForge Notebook, you'll see this prompt to open the intro notebook. You can also see on the welcome screen here that there's a link to the intro notebook, and that makes it easy to get back to the intro notebook in the future if you need to. So now let's dive into the intro notebook. This is the intro notebook. It's a simple example notebook to help you get started and orientated with DataForge Notebook. A notebook is composed of cells. Each cell can be the documentation or it can be code. You can grab to the left of a cell and drag it to rearrange your notebook and get it looking just how you like. The first cell here is a Markdown cell. Markdown is a format for rich text, and we can use it to document and explain our code. When I click the Markdown cell, it goes into edit mode, and you can see and edit the Markdown in its raw format. Press Escape or select a different cell to finish editing. If you need help with Markdown, please see the help menu. There's some great resources here to help you learn Markdown. The second cell in the notebook is a code cell. Code cells are where we can edit and evaluate our JavaScript and TypeScript code. You can see here that there's already some output after the cell from the last time that I evaluated this notebook. DataForge Notebook preserves the output of your code so you can see it again the next time you load the same notebook. What I'm going to do here though is I'm going to clear the outputs. So you can see that output's disappeared now. And I'm just doing that so I can start again and so you can see the fresh output. I'm just going to type in an addition to this code here. Just want to show you something a little bit more dynamic. So let's just show a simple sum of some numbers. To evaluate this notebook, I'm clicking on the Run button up on the toolbar. Now that evaluated faster than we could see, but what's happening here is that under the hood, DataForge Notebook is using its embedded version of Node.js to evaluate your code. Before evaluation, your code is compiled by Babel, the JavaScript compiler. This means you can use all the latest JavaScript code features without worrying about backward compatibility. See how the output there has appeared below the code cell? This is how you can visually see what your code is doing. Now to produce this output, we've used the ordinary JavaScript function console.log. You can evaluate any kind of code that you want here. Anything in JavaScript or TypeScript that would normally work under Node.js will work. And you can use all the regular Node.js APIs, and you can use any NPM module. The only thing that's specific to Dataforge Notebook in terms of coding is the display function. The display function is the workhorse of Dataforge Notebook. The display function is really powerful, and it can do so much more than just logging text. It actually understands the type of data that you pass to it. So if you remember nothing else from this getting started video, please just remember the display function, because it's the most important thing you need to know about using Dataforge Notebook. You can use the display function to visualize JavaScript objects. You can see in the output here now that we've got an interactive visualization of this JavaScript object. We can also use the display function to visualize JavaScript arrays. This looks pretty similar, but this time instead of visualizing a JavaScript object, we're visualizing an array. There's heaps more that you can do with the display function, and I'll show you some more of that in a moment. But let's have a quick look at all the commands that you can access with Dataforge Notebook. Like any desktop application, there's so many things you can do. You can open and save files, cut and paste text, things like that. The most obvious way to access these commands is through the toolbar here at the top or through the main menu. Here's the file menu where you can create, open and save your notebooks. By browsing the toolbar and menus, you can explore many of the features of Dataforge Notebook. One of the most useful is the export menu. This allows you to export your notebook to various formats, including runnable code that you can then use however and wherever you like. Dataforge Notebook is a great way to start coding a new project, and then when you're ready, export it to production-ready code. Another way to explore all the commands is through the command palette. You can get to it by clicking that button there, or you can use the hotkey Ctrl-Shift-P. The command palette is a single location to browse, search, discover, and invoke any of the functionality in Dataforge Notebook. I'm just starting to type export here, and that brings up all the different types of export commands. This allows me to browse through the functionality that's available, and I can click enter on any of these commands to invoke it. All the common commands in Dataforge Notebook have hotkeys assigned to them, so you can efficiently invoke the command. You can find out the hotkeys for various commands in the command palette here. You can also see the hotkeys in the tooltips for all the buttons in Dataforge Notebook. The hotkeys are also listed next to the items in the main menu. When you first open the intro notebook, please feel free to stay here as long as you like, editing this notebook, evaluating the code, and trying out various features so you can get a feel for Dataforge Notebook. When you are done with the intro notebook, though, you can scroll to the end and click on this link to continue your journey through the example introductory notebooks that come with it. I'm not going to do that at the moment. Instead, I want us to dive into a more advanced example notebook. If I wanted to open a notebook that I created earlier, I could do so from the file menu by clicking Open Notebook. But instead, I want to make use of one of the example notebooks that comes with Dataforge Notebook, so I'm going to click Open Example Notebook. This provides convenient access to all the example notebooks that are bundled with Dataforge Notebook. I'm opening the Visualization Example Notebook. This notebook gives you a good overview of all the different types of visualization you can do with Dataforge Notebook. Plain console logging, visualization of an array, an object, previewing tabular data, previewing JSON data, HTML, Markdown, pre-formatted text, loading and displaying CSV files and JSON files, plotting charts. Now this is a great feature of Dataforge Notebook. It's really easy to plot charts from your data. And finally, we've got plotting of maps and geographic data, which is another great feature of Dataforge Notebook. So you can see there's a lot you can do with Dataforge Notebook, and I encourage you to load up the visualization notebook yourself for a thorough look at what's possible. Now, before we finish the getting started video, I just want to show you how to install NPM modules for yourself. I'm going to create a new JavaScript notebook. Let's just say that I want to make use of the popular Axios library so that we can make HTTP requests. So I'm just loading in the Axios library. You can see here that the Axios library is automatically being installed for us, including TypeScript type definitions. The package file is also generated for us. Now I'm going to make a HTTP request to a REST API. You You can see that I'm using the await keyword here. Dataforge Notebook intelligently understands asynchronous code, and you can use the async and await keywords in your notebooks, and this makes asynchronous coding a hell of a lot easier. This REST API that I'm calling, JSON placeholder, it's just a public API that's great for testing and demonstrations. So I'm making a request to this REST API, and I'm going to display the response to see what we get back. Let's run this notebook. Now let's have a look at this output. Have a little bit more space so we can see what's going on. You can see there's a lot going on here, like we've got a HTTP status code, we've got headers, configuration, all sorts of stuff here. Oh, there's the data we're looking for. That's just one small piece of data. Let's try and get the whole list of data. So I'm just going to change the URL there for the REST API. I'm just going to give us a little bit more space here to view the output. Data here is what we're interested in. So it looks like we're getting back an array of data. Now I'm just going to drill down to look at the data more directly. Now, because it's an array, I'm going to make use of the table function to preview it as tabular data. Again, I'll just give us a little bit more space here to see what's going on. And you can see that we've got a preview of this tabular data. Display.table is just one of many functions you can use to have rich visualization capabilities for your data. Please load up the visualization example notebook yourself to see the complete range of what's possible. At this point, we could do anything we like with this data. We could put it in a database, we could save it to a file, we could even output it to a completely different REST API. The sky's the limit here because anything you can do in Node.js, you can also do in Dataforge Notebook, and you've got plenty of NPM modules to help you do it. This has been a small, simple example of what you can do with Dataforge Notebook. But what can you do if you need more help? Well, the best place to start is in the Help menu. There's many good resources here. And if you're having a problem with Dataforge Notebook, click on Report Problem here to enter an issue. If you go to the File menu, open Example Notebook, there's plenty of example notebooks here that show you how to do all sorts of interesting and useful tasks with Dataforge Notebook. Also from the Help menu, you can try going to the Wiki. And the Wiki has lots of interesting information about Dataforge Notebook, and your question might be answered there. Let's have one final look at the welcome screen. You can get the welcome screen back either by restarting Dataforge Notebook or going to the File menu and choosing New Window. So that gets you a new copy of the welcome screen up. Please explore the welcome screen. You'll find some of the best example notebooks here. You'll find a link that you can use to get to all the example notebooks. If you need any more help, please reach out to me by email or in the Slack channel. And if you need access to the Slack channel, just send me an email. And finally, if you need to learn anything more about working with data in JavaScript, you'll find a wealth of information in my book, Data Wrangling with JavaScript. It's a comprehensive guide to working with data in JavaScript, and it's available from the Manning website, or you can visit datawranglingwithjavascript.com. Thanks so much for using Dataforge Notebook. And if you haven't got Dataforge Notebook already, you can get it at www.dataforgenotebook.com.